Good afternoon everyone, and welcome to the Sunset Safari. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jamie and I have Brian along board with the thumb this afternoon. And please forgive me, it's 35 degrees centigrade, which is 95 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm sitting in the sun along with Brian. So we're going to drive and I'm going to chat to you on the way because we need some wind blowing over us. So, for those of you who don't know or might be joining us for the first time, the reason that I'm driving away straight away is this is a live safari. So this is happening right here at 3:30 in the afternoon on Djuma and Arathusa Game Reserves in the Sabi Sands. And not only are we a live safari, but we're also interactive. So if you have any questions on what you would like to see or any comments that you'd like to make, you can do that on #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@wildearth.tv. And if you're not busy watching our live broadcasts, which we do twice a day for 3 hours a day, then you should be watching the dam cameras that we have up 24/7 at both Djuma and Arathusa dams. And on that note, I'd like to say a big thank you to Tony and many other viewers for letting us know about those ellies that are at the Djuma Dam. I'm actually on my way back to Arathusa, and I'll go into that in a moment, but I know that Brent and John will be out and about very soon. They've been experimenting with new and secret technology that's all very, very exciting. But they will be out as well this afternoon. They'll be heading across to see what those ellies are up to. Now, quite the surprising sunrise safari we may have seen. So if you missed it, well, first of all, we found a tortoise, which is my second one of the season, and I'm sure you're all terribly keen to see them once again. I'll keep my eyes peeled. The thing is, it's a little bit hot. It would be a very brave tortoise that's wandering around right now this afternoon. They, being ectotherms, would take on the temperature of their surroundings a little bit too much, and I'm hoping most of the self-respecting tortoises are sleeping somewhere in the shade, unlike these kudu, who have very conveniently placed themselves next to the road by a patch of shade. That was terribly thoughtful of them. Oh, this bodes well. This is sort of how we started the sunrise safari, barring the spotted hyenas. And we've got our magnificent group of kudu once again, including Zeus with his widespread horns on the right. There should be 5 of them. I think one of them at least just ran off to the right. It's so nice to see these guys on a regular basis. They've done a little bit of crisscrossing on Triple M. It's such a nice bachelor group of kudu. They are huge, some of them. My favorite, although Zeus is wonderful, is probably the guy standing off to Zeus's left, with those incredibly twirly horns. There's just something about the way that he looks, I think is, what's the word? Magnificent? Breathtaking? I don't know. Dignified. There we go, that's a good word. They're dignified. All of them. Actually, that's not the guy I was thinking about, but anyway, I don't know where he's gone. But still, incredible to look at. Very regal, with that upright posture. Thank you, Kudu. That was a very nice surprise. And as I said, this was almost how we started our sunrise safari, when we got news of lions on Arathusa, and we were slowly making our way there. And for those of you who might have missed it, although I'm sure the regular networks of communication have caught up with you, for those of you who missed it, we played a bit of a guessing game as to who we would be seeing on the western edge of the Arathusa airstrip, and none of us got it right. It was totally unexpected. It was the Tsalala Pride, all the way from Londolozi. They've broken away from the original Tsalala Pride, and the reason behind that is all of the chaos strangely enough, we've come full circle, caused by those two Matimba males who were pushed out by the Birmingham boys a couple of weeks ago. So the Matimba males are currently lying up in Londolozi with two of the females from the Tsalala Pride. But the Pride that we saw were looking quite hungry, looking very hungry. The one male is quite injured, and they're definitely looking a little bit haunted, like they've fled to a different area of safety. We are going to be following up on them this afternoon, but because of the... Oh, my immobilizer's down here now. Going to have to try and break that particular muscle memory. We are going to go and visit them, but because it is hotter than it has been, and I think since I arrived, this is the hottest day so far, they're not going to be up to very much. Now, I know that many of the Arathusa Dam Cam viewers saw us go and have a look at them, and that we did. Hello, my boy. It's nice that you could be so close. Nope. And off he goes. Summer has brought with it a whole wide variety of joys, as well as a couple of levels of challenges in terms of animals disappearing into dense vegetation. Everything's got leaves at the moment. What was I? Oh yes, many of the viewers of the Arathusa Dam camera will have seen us go past. We did go and have a look at them once again. But I think for now I'm going to be following up on reports of Shadow's tracks at least, in a very similar area to where the lions are, as well as maybe having a look at the ellies that I last saw sleeping in the drainage line in the shade. On its way. Doesn't really feel like it. I've described this type of October wind before. It has a feel to it like opening an oven door and all of the hot air rushing out. That's kind of what it feels like. And even the little steenbokkies are feeling it. Try and find a nice open patch here. He is. Oh! And there he goes. Interesting how the wind makes everything that little bit more skittish. Now I'm very, very keen to go across to Arathusa and to be close to those lions as it starts to get a little bit darker. And the reason behind that is you may or may not have seen them dash across the front of the Arathusa Dam camera. Apparently, according to Ryan, they were hunting warthogs. And they are hungry, and they're going to be hunting at some point tonight. Especially with this wind being as it is. I'm fairly certain that that's going to happen this evening. Now, I know many people were concerned about the way that they look. They're hungry-looking lions, but not abnormally so. They're going to be absolutely fine. They just needed to get away from the area they were in. They made their way into Arathusa, which apparently they have done before. Not during my time here. We'll be following up on that a little bit later. We had those wonderfully big kudu in front of us, and Wolfgang, who's watching all the way from Sweden, you were wondering, I assume, if kudu shed their horns in the same way that the deer do in Europe and in America. And the answer is no, they are permanent. It's bone. It's solid bone all the way up the top of that structure that grows whilst they're young from a growth plate at the top of their heads, and it starts layering the bone all the way up. And then all that's happened is it's covered in a sheath of keratin, a hollow sheath to protect it. So it's living bone, it's growing bone. It's not in the same way that deers grow antlers, which is hardened blood vessels, which then drop off at the end of every season. And I know that for some antelope, the season differs in terms of their breeding season. Some females, like with reindeer, they have antlers at different times, as far as I know. It's one of the main differences between deer and antelope. Just while we are talking about their horns, we spoke a little bit this morning about, who asked me about wildebeests? Somebody asked me about wildebeests. Might have been Julie. This was a couple of days ago, so forgive my memory lapses. Let's start with these two. Oh, come on you two. Get it together. They're dashing about. Two young, actually not so young male impala were sparring there. Right, so you know how we have a resident wildebeest male, and we've spoken about how he defends a territory in the hope that the ladies might come and visit, if it's a nice area. Well, it appears as though today is his day. This is right where we saw him last, and we actually had that full conversation about him defending a territory. And there's a whole group of female in here. It is quite dense. I'm hoping they might come a little bit closer. I'm just going to try, before I reposition, I'm just going to try and get an idea as to which way they're moving. Although they seem to be fairly stationary in the block. Okay, let's try and shuffle forward. Right, so we said that male, who lives actually around here, the Gowrie repeater's just here. There's a nice open clearing where he sleeps under the tree. Wildebeest made it difficult. There you go. There's actually some sub-adults here as well. And essentially, he wants to find a territory that's got lots of nice grazing and access to water in the hope that the ladies will come to him. So completely the opposite of what a zebra does, which is to collect a group of females and keep them with him at all times. The wildebeest takes an opposite approach. Now, he is definitely in luck. I'm not sure where the male is. I can only see females. And it's not really the peak breeding time for wildebeest. Most of these cows will be pregnant, ready to give birth around December, where there's a big peak in wildebeest births out here. We've got these little sub-adults. These will be the calves from last year, December, so roughly 10 months old now. It's amazing how fast horns grow, just to carry on with what we were talking about with the kudu. All of our antelope out here, in answer to Wolfgang's question, have permanent permanent horns, and they can grow as fast as in a year, which, when you're considering that that's laying down bone, is very impressive. But they've got that typical upwards pointing look to them that singles him out as a very immature young wildebeest. Wildebeest can be a bit tricky. It's not always that easy to see the difference between male and female, especially when the males are young. And I'm wondering how many of our regular viewers can tell me some of the key ways of identifying whether or not a wildebeest is a male or a female. I'm curious to know if you know. And you can do that on hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@wildearth.tv and let me know what your thoughts are. It's a tricky one. And I'll say right from the offset, I have no idea what that little one is. Here we go, we've got some females who've moved out into the open. Not very clear at the back there, but at least we can sort of see them. Okay, well, I don't think we're going to get a much better view of our wildebeest, and I'm thinking that it might be time to carry on. We're once again in the sun, so we'll leave them be, and let's hear from you if you know the answers to the question I've just asked, and we'll have a look. Once you do answer, we'll have a look at a couple of pictures and just try and get a better idea as to how you would be able to identify for your next safari as to whether or not a wildebeest is a male or a female. And we're going to play some guessing games from my side as well. So Jeannie, you were wondering, all the way from New Hampshire, if I could guess how big a kudu bull would be. And I shouldn't have to guess because I've actually been on a couple of captures where they've caught and measured kudu bulls. And you need to just give me a moment to try and think back, because we caught quite a few things those days and measured them. And it was a good 7 years ago. But you're probably talking somewhere in the region of about 300 to 400 kilograms, depending on the size of them, which is very, very big. That would mean, what is that? That is 600 to 800 pounds, roughly. That's for a really big kudu bull. Look, the females are much, much smaller. I'm going to just, at some point, double check that measurement. Now that I'm thinking about it, it sounds a little bit high, but for a really big kudu bull, it would be somewhere in that region. There's a lot of meat. They are also, let me think this through, they're one of the biggest antelope that we get out here, especially in terms of height. Maybe not necessarily in terms of mass, but they're really only outdone in terms of the level of their shoulders by the eland, which is the biggest antelope species that we get out here. The sable might weigh a little bit more, the roan might weigh a little bit more. The waterbuck are also fairly stocky, but in terms of height, the kudu are right up there as one of the biggest antelope we see. And just think about the fact that they can, at a standing start, they have enough power to jump over a 6-foot fence without even thinking about it, without any kind of run up, and I've seen them do this myself, so I know they can. I've seen a kudu jump over 2 meters over a fence without trying. Well, I say without trying, certainly without having to do any kind of run up. Imagine launching that much weight, and most of that weight is going to be held in those very powerful shoulders and those very powerful necks of theirs. And They are very, very strong up there. And you can imagine, those horns alone are a good couple of kilograms. And if you need to be able to run, be agile, be able to fight with them, you're going to need some serious neck muscles holding that head in place. They're very cleverly structured. Some responses to our wildebeest quiz, and the one that I prefer the best, and there's a couple of different ways, but the one that I generally use is the one that Raisa got, which is very well done, and that is the fact that the male wildebeest's horns, at the point that they are a fully developed adult, are bigger than, they extend past the length of their ears, so they extend a bit further, whereas the females, the females, it generally stops at the point of the ear or just before. And I'm not talking about the full length, I'm talking about where it curves upwards. That is where you sort of draw the line and have a look at that measurement. Now, Diane and Kathleen, you also mentioned a couple of different ways. One is to look at the boss, which is definitely true. So if you're looking at the boss, and it's not quite fully fused together at the top, there's quite a bit of hair, similar in a way, I suppose, to what you see with buffalo, and that can indicate a female, but then don't forget as well that the young males are still developing. And then the last way is to look at the face. Now, for that I'm going to just try and find a picture for you quickly, but I'm going to do so in some shade, if you don't mind. But essentially a male, for the most part, has an all-black face, whilst the female's black on her face is broken by a strip of brown at the top. And that makes it fairly clear. So you can just see that strip of brown that breaks it. The difficulty here being, now I'm not sure if any of you have seen the wildebeest do this on a live safari, but they do it because they've got pre-orbital glands. And it's something that scientists, they understand why they rub them on trees, because obviously you're planting your scent there. But in terms of why they rub their faces in mud, nobody quite fully knows. It's something Nyala do as well, and Kudu. They stick their head in mud and give it a good rub around. Now in summer, you very often see wildebeest with mud all over their face. So it can be a little bit tricky in that respect. 3, grab it for you. So essentially, if we look at this picture here, this is a male, so you can see the black extends all the way from the tip of the nose to the top of the forehead, and the boss is fairly well fused. It's not completely fused, and the horns extend all the way out past the ears. If this were a female, the horns would be a little bit narrower, and the strip of brown falls just above the eye here. But you have to get the light exactly right. But that's usually the best way, especially when we're in thick, dense vegetation like we were earlier, like we were looking into. Behavior is also a good indication. So a lone wildebeest is most likely a male. You don't really get them on their own as females out here unless something's happened, which has been separated from her herd. But apart from that, don't forget that there could always be a male hanging out with the rest of the herd. So it's nice to see that the wildebeest are still coming through Djuma, even though I said a lot of them have moved towards the southern areas around the river systems where there's some nice grazing opportunities for them. guys so much for the update about the Tsalala Pride, who are still at the Arathusa Dam and apparently eyeing up Nyala. Now we are keeping an eye on that situation from the ground, so I'm very close to the dam. I'm very, very close to their position. If it looks as though they are going to have a go for it, then we will race there and get to see it. So Leslie and Sheila, thank you very much for your information. I'm not ignoring it, I promise. It's just that I know that at the moment it is very, very hot and the hunting conditions around that dam are a little bit tricky. They're going to struggle, but they are probably going to hungrily watch every animal that passes by. It's just because it is so open out there. But if anything changes, and it is being monitored, not only by us, but by the guests at Arathusa, and I'm sure I'll hear that over radio comms, then I will be racing across in that direction to see what they're up to. And speaking of Arathusa, I'm going to switch across, although I'm fairly certain we will be the only people out for the next half an hour or so. If I were Shadow, where would I be? Haha. Game starts again. Once again, in a full circle from yesterday afternoon, in the drainage lines around the Arathusa Dam, and just to the south of me lies the airstrip that they has always been there. It was a dirt-covered airstrip before this, but Arathusa has recently done quite a great deal of construction work on it in order to lay down some asphalt and some tar. And James, who's watching from Kansas City in Missouri, you were wondering if I've noticed any changes in the behavior of the animals. Are they spending time avoiding it? Are they more likely to be on it? What's happening there? And it's a little bit too soon to say. Look, with the amount of construction work that's gone in there, the animals did initially avoid it. They are back again. I saw lots and lots of animal life at the airstrip yesterday, including that warthog family that lives in the burrow just next door to it. So it hasn't caused any major disruption. It might take a little while though for it to settle down and for us to get a proper indication as to how they're going to respond. There's still quite a large number of quite deep ditches around it, but once those are concreted and filled in, then we might see a bit more of behavior. In my experience with airstrips, animals get used to them very, very quickly. They don't necessarily avoid them. And very often you'll find things like lions and leopards lying on them. Sometimes on cold days when they're trying to soak up some sun, you might find them around there. As well as just taking advantage of the nice open view that they have from that area. Made my way back towards the drainage line systems. Apparently they reported tracks of shadows, so I'm going to do a couple of crisscross drives through there, as well as to look for the elephants that I saw there as well this afternoon after the sunrise safari. They were making a lot of noise. Most of the animals at the moment, it seems, on Arathusa have taken refuge deep in the shade, which is why I think the drainage lines are a very good bet. Those elephants might still even be sleeping around there. sure what upset those elephants. Some of the viewers might have heard them squealing a little bit earlier. They gave a bit of a trumpet, a bit of a scream, and raced around like maniacs away from the dam. They did actually spend some time swimming and wading in the dam. And I think it's actually the fact there's a couple of youngish bulls and one really big bull, one really big male, who was hanging around behind them. And I think he might have done something to disturb them in some way. At Arathusa, so it'll be very interesting to get there a little bit later as it starts to cool down. They are hungry looking. They're definitely in the mood to grab something. Driving parallel grids just to double check. Shadow's been moving through this area. I want to make sure that I don't miss her. There's a couple of really good places to check. Shadow's been very much isolated to this particular area, and I have some questions as to why that might be. Now, we know that she has been looking for Sindile in that unfortunate situation, but she has reached the end of that period, and her body will very soon start going back into first a false estrus and then a genuine estrus, but that's the way it should go. However, we did see Shadow mating with Tingana about 4 weeks ago. Well, I say we, I was on leave, but I know that Shadow was mating with Tingana about 4 weeks ago, around Juma. The question is now, it's still a little bit early, so leopards gestate for about 90 days, between 90 to 100 days, depending on the individual. If that was genuine estrus that she was showing, and she did actually mate, and that mating was successful and she is pregnant, it would only be in another 2 months before she starts to get really mysterious and hiding away. And we've been chatting a little bit about the fact that Karula's been pacing the same area recently around Buffelshoek Dam, and that she might even have had suckle marks. We never were really able to confirm it. In that particular sighting, we couldn't get close enough to see. But those suckle marks will be apparent from the very beginning, from the moment those cubs are born. She will immediately be lactating, and you can actually see it just before as well, although you have to be able to have quite a close look at a leopard. It's a bit more obvious than a lion. But if you have a look at the way that the nipples start to get a little bit bigger and a little bit darker, it's a bit easier to judge whether or not they're pregnant. around the edges of the airstrip. Kathy, who's watching from Tennessee, Kathy wanted to know what happens when a plane needs to come and land and there are animals on the airstrip, which I've had happen before whilst doing these little bush flights between cities in a lodge somewhere. And Kathy, the answer is that they chase them off. Now usually on a drop-off or a day when guests are being taken to the airstrip to fly away, they'll always be delivered by a guide, and they will always be picked up by a guide. So that guide will go out and chase the animals away from the airstrip. The plane can't circle forever, especially in times like summer, where the air currents and the conditions can be very, very volatile. And we're going to start to see some of those thunderstorms coming through, and those thunderstorm systems are enormous. So for those little planes, it's actually important that they can't really delay necessarily before they land. So they will be chased off in the least impactful way possible, usually just by gently nudging towards them with a vehicle until they move off. Unexpected subject of airplanes, we did actually have one go over our heads this morning on its way to land. And Natasha, you were wondering if I've ever been part of game counts, which are generally conducted from a helicopter, and you were wondering what the process is. I'm just going to check very, very carefully for shadow in here. I know that she likes this area, and I'll answer your question when I'm on the other side of the dip, Natasha. Distinct feeling of deja vu about it. Nope, she's being mysterious. Just trying to listen to the updates from the Game Drive channel as well. Unfortunately, being in a drainage line, they're a little bit static. Alrighty, Natasha's question about whether or not I've ever taken part in a game capture. The answer is yes. Game capture I have done from a helicopter, game counts I have not. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the people who do game counts. They fly in grids and blocks over and over for about 2 or 3 days in a row. And it really is quite incredible the way that they do it. And they're able to recognize from the air a male zebra, a female zebra. How they do that, I just don't know. I think it's quite incredible. But they're very, very experienced and practiced at it. Now, I have done game capture from helicopters where animals have darted. One particular instance that comes to mind was many years ago, a rhino that we had on the reserve I was working at had got herself, we don't know where it came from, we think it fell off a truck, off a construction vehicle, but she'd managed to get caught in a coil of copper wire, and it wrapped around, all the way around her feet, around her ankle, around her body and her face. And obviously we had to get this off. She wasn't injured, but she was going to be. It was only a matter of time before it caught on something and tightened in areas where it shouldn't be. So we set off searching for her, and because I was the one who knew that area and knew those rhinos probably the best out of anyone at that particular time. They asked me to come up in the chopper to help find them, but at this point we'd been so close to catching them, and just as it was about to happen, they ran. So they were a bit stressed out and a bit freaked out, and their time is of the absolute essence, because you really don't want that female to run and injure herself any more than she might do already. So we flew in this helicopter, and I was sort of torn between that desperate feeling that we had to find this rhino, and then the very solid certainty that I was about 2 seconds away from losing whatever breakfast I'd eaten that morning. It's a distinctly unsettling feeling. At one point I was looking straight ahead of me at the ground. Those chopper pilots who do the kind of flying that these guys do are phenomenally skilled. They fly low, they fly fast, and they do sudden ducks and turns and dives. And of course there's no door, obviously. You're strapped in, but there's no door. So you do occasionally look out and there's just the vast ground beneath you. Anyway, the happy ending to that part of the story, this is where I left the Ellies, was that we did manage to dart her. She was absolutely fine. That's where they are. I'm just going to call in and tell them that I'm coming that way. Daisy. Well, not too sure where we went there, or when we went actually. I was in the middle of telling you a story about rhino. Might have been when I used the Game Drive channel. It shouldn't have. It hasn't been cutting signal before. Let us continue on our way and make our way to some ellies that they've picked up. But let me just finish up my story. So the happy ending was we darted the rhino, we pulled the copper wire off. Now here's the interesting part of that whole story. Moving away from choppers for a moment. That rhino, her mother, was one of my favorite rhinos, and she usually was hanging out. She'd just been kicked out by her mom because her mom had had a new calf, a new baby, and she was wandering around on her own, and she joined forces with her older brother, who was 4 years older than her. So she was quite tiny at the time. She was about 5 years old, a small little female with a 7-year-old brother. And we all jumped out of the car as soon as she went to sleep to go rush and help her. And it was hot, so you need to pour water over them. You cover their eyes, you cover their ears so that they're not in any way disturbed. And then you act quickly to get them up and about as soon as possible. So we all jumped off and rushed in. Now bear in mind, this helicopter's just landed right next to her, and there's about 30 people standing around her. And the next thing, somebody looked up and went, "Rhino's coming," and her brother had turned all the way back around. Shame. I mean, it's incredible. Who knew that they could do this? He turned all the way back around to come and chase us away from his little sister. I mean, how phenomenal is that? It's such an amazing thought. They've got such strong bonds. By all the knowledge that we have of animals, he should have been running far away with the chopper and the cars and the disturbance. And in the end, we did manage to chase him away so that we could finish removing the wire before waking her up. And she then dashed off to rejoin him. And they, as far as I know, I haven't been back for a while, but as far as I know, they're still hanging out together. And in another instance, I actually saw her put herself, her brother was at the age, sort of 8 years old, he was starting to mark his territory to be dominant. And the dominant bull in that area was a lot older than him, but not much bigger, didn't respond very well to that. So for about 3 weeks solid, they squealed at each other, and they make the most phenomenal noises, squealing and grunting. And the one time I ever saw them physically clash, his 5-year-old sister, who was easily half his size, tried to put herself in the middle of the fight between the dominant bull and her brother. Now, I'm not sure what the reason behind that is. I don't know. I'm merely telling you the facts. You can draw your own conclusions from them. She put herself in the middle of that fight 3 times. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. In a fight between 2 males bigger than her. I don't know. I don't know what the explanation is. It's just as an interesting aside. But to the best of my knowledge, Ilanga and Shajana are still wandering around quite happily together. Okie dokie. I'm going to speed up a little bit to loop around back to where those eddies are. Also want to see if I can have a chat to Ryan, since my game drive channel's a little bit tricky at the moment. Around, as always, searching for the ever-evasive shadow. Oh, it's windy. Melissa, it's an absolute pleasure. I love hearing from you all, and it's no problem answering questions on spotted hyenas. They have one of my favorite creatures out here, so I'm more than happy to chat about them for as long as anybody wants to. Now, that being said, you want to chat about leopards a little bit this afternoon, and you were wondering if females will ever kill another female's cubs. They won't go out of their way to. It has been reported to have happened, but it is quite rare. Generally, they stay out of each other's way, and there's a level of avoidance, so it's not nearly as common as strange males coming in and killing females' cubs. Doesn't usually happen, and we've spoken before that usually leopards in an area who are female are quite often related, so the female cubs of a leopard don't disperse that far. So around you, you're more than likely to have a mother, a sister, a daughter, anything like that kind of bond, and because of that, that in itself makes it even less likely that a leopard's going to turn around and kill another's offspring, simply because it's part of their own genetic line. And for the most part with animals, that is what their deal is. That is what they're aiming for, is to continue that genetic, the genetic propagation of their genes, essentially. So it has been recorded very, very rare. The same goes for female cheetah. They do sometimes have their cubs killed by strange males, but for the most part, although they have home ranges, they're not really strictly defensive or territorial in any way. So there's recorded cases of females being close to each other, anything like that. Okay, we're nearly at the Ellies. Nearly. Dip in the ground and apparently lost you guys while there. And Fada, you were just saying that it's so beautiful on this particular patch of Arethusa, and I think maybe that's part of the contributing factor. Not that it's too beautiful for the signal to cope, but just simply there's quite a few dips and dives in the ground. And it's personally one of my favorite areas to be in. in Arethusa. There's plenty of shade, which I'm looking at as we drive past it into the patches of sun. It's beautiful, it's thick, there's a lot of really nice drainage line trees, and of course there's always the problem of a spotted cat hiding in the shade. It's where they like to, oh, elephant, be. Hello, boy. What's the matter with you? Are you hot and grumpy? Or are you part of the problem with that herd the other day? Or earlier today? As I said, the ellies that we saw at Arethusa were quite unsettled, and I think these guys are following behind that herd. He goes up into the top of the drainage line there. I'm going to let him chill out for a moment. He didn't seem all that happy to see Brian and myself, which is quite sad because I was very happy to see him. Here he goes. Well, bye, Eddie. I'm just going to do another scout around just to see who else is in the area. I'm not going to be following behind him to stress him out at all. He didn't respond particularly positively to our presence. He seemed distinctly disapproving of the whole process. So I'll let him be for now and just carry on searching. I know that the rest of the herd is somewhere here, including some of those big males. Otherwise we shall return to our young and rather grumpy male. Might require a further loop. Now I'm not sure if you guys were watching when I had Kwatile sort of pre-mating session flirting with Tingana and attempting to get him interested in her. And we drove through some incredibly dense and thick vegetation. And that's one of the things that is in this area as well. It was right here in that particular drainage line. It makes it beautiful, but it also makes it difficult to stay with the animals. And if I were to try and follow that ellie now, all I would do was make a lot of noise and send him further into the vegetation. Those stories about the rhino, and I really love rhino. They are the animal I would say that I probably worked the most with, and I've worked the closest with over the last few years. They've always been my favorite. They were probably the animal that got me into guiding. I remember when I was 8 years old going to the rhino park and being allowed to look at some of the orphaned rhino there, and I fed one of them. And then they broke the rules and allowed me to go with them on a walk because they just knew that I loved the animals so much. And after that I did all the research you could ever do on different rhino and how they work and all the different species around the world. And then of course I went to start working in the bush, and I learned far more being out and about and working with them every day. Now, as a policy, WildEarth does not show rhino. Now, I'm sure that you all are aware that there is a tremendous crisis at the moment in southern Africa and the world in terms of rhino poaching. And the numbers have reached incredibly and staggeringly high levels. So we don't want to make things any easier for potential henchmen or associates of the poachers who might get an idea of where the rhinos are. So we avoid talking about them, we avoid showing them whenever they can. They occasionally surprise us, but for the most part we try and avoid it. But I'm sure that you guys would love to chat a little bit about rhino, and there's no reason why. And all of my stories come from outside of this area. I haven't worked particularly closely with the rhinos within here, and I'm sure we can chat a little bit about them and some of the experiences that I've had with them. The reserve I worked at, just to put a little bit of a sad part of it, we've spent a lot of time tracking the rhino and monitoring them, and in the early days it was only really us who did that. We followed them from beginning to end. We knew all of them by name, ID kits with ear notches, and we lost half of our population within 6 months to poaching. But what really was probably the most magical moment for me in terms of rhino experiences was about, first of all, straight after I found 3 of them that had been killed. Straight after that, we went walking and we found the cutest newborn baby rhino. It was born to a rhino known as Gunda Gunda, which means tractor, which was perfect for her. It was her first calf. It was a little baby girl, and we'd gone walking, we found her, and then all of a sudden this little head popped up out of the grass that was taller than it was. So when they're born, they're about 40 kilograms in weight, and the mom spends about 15 months of her life gestating for that one calf. And they're born obviously similar to elephants. They're immediately able to stand up and wander around. They've got giant feet, absolutely too big for their bodies, and giant ears. And they do little dances when they're young, much like that Tsalala baby that we saw, running around just for the fun of it and playing. Baby rhinos do exactly the same thing, and they skip sideways before settling down to suckle. And for the next few years of its life, it's going to spend with mom. She will lactate for about a year and a bit, and then it will slowly start eating solids and supplementing with solids at probably around, I would say, 6 months old. Although they do, interestingly enough, they do imitate mom's behavior from earlier than that. So what they'll do is, you'll see them, especially white rhino, when mom is eating grass and doesn't want to suckle them, the baby tries to eat grass but doesn't really have the teeth for it, and so it kind of just has it in that very wide, broad top lip that is so characteristic of white rhino, and gives it a little bit of a munch with grass falling out. It's hilarious to watch. They're very special creatures, white rhino. Black rhino, oh sorry, I was busy telling you about the life cycle. So for the next 3 years, that calf will be so tightly bonded to his mom. After about a year, she starts to associate again with other rhinos. White rhinos are quite sociable creatures. She'll associate once again with the dominant bulls of the area. Her previous calves will come back and rejoin up with her, and she'll start to join up with other females as well. She just has to get over that first year grumpy phase that she goes through, where she kind of doesn't want anybody around her. Once that's over, then she is back to being sociable. Then at about a year and a half to 2 years comes the scariest time of the calf's life, especially because if it's a male calf. And that's because the female comes back into estrus again, and the male is hugely intolerant of anyone else being around her whilst he's trying to court her. And he spends about 2 weeks trying to get this female to give him the attention he wants. And during that time, he quite often chases the calf right away from mom. Very confusing time in their lives. But as soon as she's mated, then that calf will be back with her once again. And then it gets even worse for the poor young rhino, because a year and a half later, mom has a baby, and mom completely kicks the young calf out of her life for the time being, because she's got to focus her attention on a new one. So she'll chase that calf away. He or she spends about a week or so being very confused and hanging close to mom, but not quite with her, because she won't let him be anywhere near her. And then usually what happens is they wander off and they join up with other young rhino. Quite often they're siblings, which is what happened with Ilaga and Chinjana in that story I was telling you. And then they come back together again. I'm looking for our Ellies over here in this particular area, since the rest of the Arethusa seems to still be sleeping somewhere in the shade. I must say that rhino are quite simply my favorite creatures to be around. Black rhino are a different kettle of fish. They're full of attitude. They're smaller. They're a lot smaller. They're easily a ton or more smaller. Except for one named Fukita, who in my experience is probably the biggest black rhino I've ever seen, and he had a temper to match. They're quite entertaining as well. And black rhino have this reputation of being unduly aggressive. They're definitely different to white rhino. They're definitely not as placid. But for the most part, they're all bluster. There's a lot of stomping and snorting and huffing and puffing, but they don't mean it most of the time. That being said, my scariest on-foot moment was Elizabeth, the black rhino. A couple of tales about the pachyderms, the smaller pachyderms that we don't show you for very, very good reasons. I'm not sure where their larger cousins have gone though. That elephant bull was not interested in being seen. It was almost completely antisocial there. I think he may have disappeared for the time being, and it might be time to move a bit further afield. Waiting for a moment to head out of that dip. We have a question from Jean, who's watching in North Carolina. Jean, you want to know if rhinos make any noises, and they definitely do. They have some of the best noises, really strange sounds. Some of them almost sound like whale calls. They do grunts, they do squeals. The babies are very, very vocal. They beg for milk in a little sort of squealing tone. It's adorable to hear. And occasionally whenever they chase each other or get poked by a horn, then they'll emit this little squeal. They make very strange sounds during courtship. It's a combination of huffing and puffing and groaning, whilst the female chases the male round and round and away from her for about 2 weeks. What else do they do? They've got a huge variety of noises that they make, but probably the most common, and it's not the sound you expect to hear from them at all. It's very, very different. It's very high-pitched. I spent a lot of time looking at the rhinos of the reserve I worked. It's all the reserves that I've worked at, and drawing up family trees and so on. You get to know them very well. I will say that they all have their own characters, much like elephants. I don't think that they're as bright as elephants, but they definitely have their own personalities. Alrighty, I think it's time to shift our search further afield. Our eddies don't seem to want to come out of the drainage line. Might be time to head back to around the dam area, see what's happening there. continue on our way away from the elephant that we saw. Wingnut, you were wondering, you've only just joined us and you've missed the story behind the elephant. Well, essentially we heard them, or we saw them actually, when we were around this area this afternoon after the sunrise safari, or this morning. And the elephants did come through. They were sleeping, but they had a little bit of a tussle between them and some young bulls that were there, and I think that's what caused all of those vocalizations that you might have heard on the Arathusa Dam camera. Now I've just looped around to go and see that elephant bull, and he immediately shook his head at us in a terribly grumpy manner, and then moved right off into some incredibly dense bush. Now, in my experience with that area, that it's not a small patch of thicket, it's quite a broad patch of thicket. And I don't want to follow behind him in any way and upset him any more than he already was. I don't know what his problem was, but he was secreting very heavily from the temporal glands. He responded quite negatively to us from quite a big distance away. And although I don't in any way think he would have harmed us, he's just showing us signs of stress. So to then go following behind is just not going to happen in that respect. It's just going to upset him further. Where the rest of the breeding herd came through, I'm honestly not sure. Brian only reported 2 males in that area, but I think they've both moved off into the thicket. So I'll keep my eyes peeled from around here and see if maybe they pop out here, which they could well do. Still no sign of Shadow. I've been looking for her tracks. I think it's time to move a little bit further afield and find some more animals, since this side doesn't seem to have all that many around it. I haven't even seen that many birds. I think there's something funny coming in the weather, maybe. Some weird looking clouds coming through. Maybe they're all aware of the hungry lions. Beautiful. Actually, about rhino. Obviously, we can't really demonstrate this too well for you. Haha, I'm sure I just saw an animal. It's a little animal, but it's an animal. There's a dwarf mongoose in there. I'm going to try and get us a bit closer to. Hopefully they're brave and they come out. Just while I do that, we had a question about telling the difference between male and female rhino. And it's actually one of the most tricky things to do when you first start seeing them, although you get very, very used to it after a while. Let's see if our little mongoose are feeling brave. Let's stop here for the moment. And whilst we wait for them to come out, I'll finish answering the question about male and female rhino. So very similar to elephants, the rhino's testicles are internal, so you can't see them. They don't dangle outside of the body, they're up near the kidneys. So essentially what you're looking at is between their back legs, similar to what I pointed out with that male elephant the other day. For the males, you're basically looking for a forwards facing penis sheath that comes down in a V. With the females, it's a slightly more open at the back end, slightly more square looking. In the males, the penis sheath forms a V at the back. And that's pretty much the only way to tell. If the rhino is urinating, then it's very easy to see, because then the rhino's penis sprays backwards, whereas with the females, they just urinate straight down. And it's also a matter of looking at their behavior as well. With dominant bulls, they're much, much bigger. They've got big, thick, long horns, and they tend to scrape when they defecate. So they scrape and mark their territory that way. Whereas females do not, they just deposit their dung. But you've got to be careful there as well, because sub-adult males won't deposit their dung or won't scrape their dung either. It's a way of marking territory. I don't think our dwarf mongoose are going to be brave. There's no sign of any heads poking out here. Maybe they've decided it's too hot for them as well. Nope, no luck. Okay, well, we shall leave our dwarf mongoose then to their daily activities. They don't seem to want to come out, which is a pity, because they're definitely, along with the rhino, one of my favorite animals to see. And we'll carry on our way. It's still a little bit too hot to be making our way to those lions, and there's still quite a standby situation with them. Oh, immobilizer is there. We'll head across there at about 5:15 to 5:30. We'll start going across to see them again. I'm also giving the other guides plenty of opportunity to spend time with them, since they are a new pride not only for us but for quite a few of the guides here. I know that they've made trips into Arathusa before, but a lot of the guides were also asking for a bit of background history into the Tsalala Pride. On the Land Rover known as Wendy. Brent is out and about somewhere on Jigger. And of course, we have to name the vehicles. We spend every day, twice a day on them. And they both have their own little characteristics and nuances that you have to get to know and to learn and to love. And maybe not love too much sometimes. And Pat, you were wondering why they're called Wendy and Jigger. And the answer to that, well, let's start with jigger. To jigger, or jigger, means to sort of do this, windy, drive around in a windy manner. Jigger, it means all over the place, essentially. And in an interesting and completely related note, jigger has a bent steering column, or a bent steering box, which means that if you steer on a straight road, jigger kind of veers. I mean, if you don't steer. If you don't hold jigger in a firm line, jigger will take you where jigger would like to go. And quite often that's off the road. So you've got to make sure that you keep quite a firm rein in jigger. Wendy's, there's a bit of history behind Wendy. So jigger does this. Wendy stays nice and straight. If I lead Wendy, she's fine. Ish. Jigger would already be off the road. With Wendy, apparently originally WildEarth was going for a different vehicle, and it was perfect for the purposes of being a full vehicle, and somehow something happened and somebody else got to buy it ahead of them, but it was already called Wendy. So when they did finally find our current Wendy, they named it Wendy after the car that got away. And now, sitting in our driveway, not yet ready for a maiden voyage, there is apparently a third brand spanking new vehicle, not new, but looking very less beaten up than Jigger and Wendy. And it will be at some time before that vehicle is up and about and operational. And of course we can't name it yet. The guides have to be able to drive it. We have to get a sense of the characteristics of the car before we can provide a suitable name. But once we've done that, then I'm sure we will let you all know as to what our new lady will be called. What you doing, Squirrel? Where are you going? There was a squirrel. There it is. Oh boy. Squirrel, would you like to come back out? Disappeared in the center of that somewhere. Well, our squirrel has disappeared. I just got distracted by the Game Drive channel as well. Hey, there he is. He's vanished again. Oh dear. All of the animals on Arathusa have become so camera shy. None of them want to be seen. Intently off in a different direction. She's not looking at us at all. Let's see. That's just, nope. She was just looking around. Station in charge of Ingalo Lock coming for Jamie. Go. There's a camera shy Impala in there. She's still quite nervous. I'm not sure why she's on her own. She might have been quite involved in her browsing and just lost track of the rest of the herd for a moment. Well, we'll leave her be. She also doesn't want to be on camera, much like the dwarf mongoose and the squirrels. Let's start heading across to see what we can see close to the Arathusa Dam. Example of the tracks I'm seeing in the road. I want to see if you can figure out what they are. It's not a very clear one. Let's try over here. How's it, Sean? How are you? How are you? Good, and you? Cool. My radio's not getting through. Do you know?
Because you called in before 4 o'clock, so I'll fix it for you.
Okay.
You're on first standby.
Sure.
Ships is going in.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Thanks, Sean. Thank you, thank you. All right. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye. And very kindly, Sean has made sure that we have a position at the lion sighting as it starts to get a little bit later. Oh yes, the tracks. I'm going to keep an eye out for them. I've seen them a few times. I want to find a nice clear one that hasn't been partly driven over. Might be time for a quick sip of water as well. There's the rest of the impala herd hiding in there. I did copy from you, Sean. Thank you. Copy that. Thank you. Alrighty, well, we can make our way towards the lions now that it's a little bit cooler. Our impala don't seem to be too interested in sticking around. I don't know what's got them. They're not spooked. They're not alarm calling. They're just slightly unsettled. Stopping since we did finally get a nice clear view of at least some impala coming through, as well as that storm front that's on its way. I'm really hoping it brings some rain. I think it's time for us to leave this impala to his business. I don't think this needs much in the way of narration. So I'm going to get Wendy started up and we'll carry on our way to the lions. And Gracie, who is one of our regular viewers and who is 8 years old from Ohio. Gracie, you want to know how I know that the vehicles are girls. I guess I don't really, it's just kind of a feeling I get. I've always thought that cars should have girls' names, if that makes sense. My car is a girl's name, my mom's car is a girl's name. I don't know, it's a really interesting question. I don't know why I do that. I just do. It's just one of those things. I'll have to try and think of a reason. I'm trying to think of things that I might name that would be boys. You know how when you get big storms, Gracie, they're automatically, or they used to be automatically called girls' names. Now I think they're a mixture of girls and boys' names. I don't know. I think it's a girl. It's definitely a girl. You'll know when you see it. It's a girl. Let me just hop on the Game Drive channel. Yeah, standing by. seem to be back with you again. Every now and again we lose you. But luckily now that I've pulled myself into this lion sighting, we should be okay for now. Towards the lions who are lying up just by this dam wall. Oh, I do love this dam. It's so beautiful in there. Let's just stop for the moment, if we can, and just have a look down at that bird that's sitting there. There's quite a few of them wandering around the patches, but I'm not sure how often we get to see them up close. Look how they run across the water reeds. It's incredible. Oh, there's the elephants somewhere there. Just heard them scream at each other. Those are African jacanas. Perfectly adapted. They almost seem like they're walking on water in places. Got hugely broad feet as a way of increasing the surface area and making sure they make the most of those water weeds that are holding them up. There's about 4 of them wandering around. I think some of them might be quite young, maybe a previous brood. See how they all racing off. Yes, these are juveniles, and I think that the adult is just a little bit behind them. Interesting little creatures, very interesting little birds. I'm not sure if you can hear them chirping. It might be a little bit difficult over this wind. All making soft squeaks. Didn't realize we had a family of jacana as well as a family of geese at Arathusa Dam. Lions are just up ahead. Can you spot them? Have you spotted them yet? I can see them from where I am. Where do you think that they might be? I think Brian's gonna give you a quick sneak peek. Now the guys who are watching the Arathusa Dam, you might be, or the dam camera, might be a bit easy for you. There you go. Balls of tawny fluff. Well, not fluff, balls of tawny muscle maybe. Be a bit more intimidating than fluff. All sitting together in the shade. Now last time I was here, the female without the tail wasn't around. I'm not sure if she's back again. So when we came here earlier with the rest of the crew, or some of the rest of the crew, she was largely absent. So I'm very curious to see if she's there now. Let's go and have a look and see who we've got. And then once we get there, then I'll chat a little bit about Lyle's question about lions and leopards' whiskers, which is very interesting and something I hadn't noticed. Them at the moment. Oh. No, there's the other one. I found the lioness. She's kind of in my way. Well, now, if I'd known she was there, I might have approached from a different direction. There's a starling making a furious amount of noise. This is the young lioness with the tail. I don't see that other lioness. I wonder where she's vanished off to. The other three are just off to the right there. That starling who's chirping away above our heads and making all of that noise whilst I'm trying to talk. Oh, now the hippo's joined in. The starling is just doing his evening chorus, as it were. There he is, well spotted, Brian. He's just chattering away. It's not an alarm call at the lions, he's just contact calling. Now, those of you who've been watching these lions all day on the Arathusa Dam camera, I have a question for you. Did you see the female or both females come out at any point? Because when we were here earlier, we definitely didn't see her, and we weren't able to figure out exactly where she'd gone. And now sitting here, as far as I can tell, unless she's on the other side, which I can't see from here, and I have a lioness in my way, I don't think she's around. I'm going to shuffle forward a little bit, but I definitely can't go past this lioness unless she chooses to move. She's not going anywhere. No, I can't see the lioness. I'm going to stop here for the moment. I mean, obviously I'm not going to get any closer to her. It looks, just for the record, it does look like we're closer to her than we actually are. I'm not going to drive right up on top of her. I've still left her with plenty of personal space. It's just because of the angle that the camera's at that it looks like our bonnet's in the way. She's looking much more relaxed than she did earlier. They all are. They seem to have found a safe haven. And I don't see that female without a tail anyway. Alright, well I think we're going to have to reposition. To do that, I need to loop around. Now, obviously, being in the position we are in, I can't really get a good view of her properly without having to be further back on the bridge. I can't get a good view of these three. I didn't know she was in the middle of the concrete quite to that extent. Of course, by the time I've looped around, they could have moved. So what I'm going to do is go back a little bit, answer a couple of questions about whiskers, and then we'll loop around and reposition to a better spot from the other side. Especially as it starts to get a little bit later, we don't want to miss out on any of the action. Alright, beautiful girl. Alright, well let's just have a look at which young male we've got here and whether or not he's whether he's the injured one. That's also one of the other reasons that I want to come around and just double check them. I want to have a look at that injury from a different perspective. Or is that female? I'll grab my binoculars. He looks fine. They are young lions. We spoke quite a lot about this, or we spoke at length this morning about the fact that they're probably somewhere in the region of about 2 years old. They're still only just at the sub-adult stage. Not sure if I can see the female behind them, but they're only just getting their mane coming through, just got those little spots, and we can see those. I did ask earlier for all kinds of screenshots of the characteristic whisker patterns of these, especially these 3 males, since there's a good chance we might be seeing them in the future if they survive their current sense of turmoil. Now, before I leave and loop around so that we can make our way back in here, I had a question from Lyle about lions' whiskers. And you've picked up on the fact that their whiskers are slightly shorter than those of leopards, and yes, they most definitely are. And you were wondering, because in cats' whiskers, or with cats' whiskers, they can be a very useful indication of the spaces that a cat can fit into in terms of width. And you were wondering if it works the same way with leopards and lions. And it does to an extent. It's more a function of, imagine you're a leopard walking through some of the drainage lines that we go through at night at that sort of 3-foot level or even smaller. So you've got so much dense vegetation around you. It's a kind of an extra sensory perception, and it's more important for leopards than it is for lions because they move through denser areas. So they're even more reliant on their whiskers. And even though they do have excellent night vision, sometimes they might be focused on prey ahead of them and running ahead of them. And then it's really, really important so that they don't do damage. You've seen the thorns that we have out here. It's so important that they don't do any damage to their eyes or to their face that way. It's just part of the way that they hunt and the areas that they utilize that mean that they have to be really careful. Okay, I think it's time to reposition just so that we can get a slightly better view of the other males, and I don't want to lose out on that particular spot whilst we have the sighting to ourselves. But it does mean we have to do quite a long reverse. So bear with me, I'm going to be doing a backwards live safari for quite a while. There's not really much in the way of U-turn space up here. Range the whole way, however. Okay, so reversing backwards all the way, back past the dam, up over the dam wall. If you guys have seen that female without a tail, and we've got an answer back from Diane, who has been watching the dam camera. And Diane, you told me that you haven't seen the female, which is very, very interesting. I wonder if she didn't go off hunting on her own. I know that they chased warthogs earlier, but that's a very interesting situation. I wonder why she left them. I know that 2-year-old male lions can be very, very good at upsetting the apple cart in hunting. I've seen 2-year-old lions mess up hunts before. They're not very good, and maybe she just decided she needed to be free of them since they were encumbering her a little bit, and she disappeared off. I'm not too sure about that. Okay, we're going to do a quick loop. Sorry to get to those lines and discover that we had to turn around, but we're just going to do a quick loop and we'll be back with them very shortly. female. Ouch, bug in the eye. And from PK and Susan, apparently you saw her disappear over the dam wall when they were chasing the warthogs and into the drainage line. And that sounds about right. That's probably where she stayed at this point. Luckily, we're about to go past there, so we'll be able to check it out there for her first before making our way to those other lions.
Must have been hunting with them and then just decided. I noticed when the males went to lay down with her this morning that she wasn't feeling terribly sociable. She gave them a bit of a baring of her teeth, wasn't that keen on their company. This is where they came from. Their tracks are all in the road here, so they walked all the way from the southwestern corner of Arethusa and done a big loop and then gone back towards the dam. And I wonder if that lioness, for the young ones, this is probably the first time they've ever been up here. And I wonder if that lioness has strong memories of being around the southern area of Arethusa. I'd put her probably at about 9 or 10 years old. She's not a young lioness by any stretch of the imagination. Sorry, he slammed on brakes. Not sure if it's the one that was being chased. Just quickly before he dashes off, a brief view. Definitely covered in mud. Now I believe that those Tsalala lions chased warthog, and this could have been one of them. We need to get going or we're going to lose our position at the lions. Sorry everybody. Our stations, when I was with those in Gala, they were open lock. I'm just looping back around towards the northern side of the dam. Sorry, I had to use the game drive channel a little bit earlier, and I think that might be, for some reason, interfering with our signal. We're almost back at the lions. Actually, we're in one of my favorite parts of Arethusa anyway, so I'm not too troubled. Those lions are still looking very, very flat. And at least this way we can have a brief look for that female as well. See if she's anywhere in the area. To have a look at you. We're in a bit of a rush to get back to the lions before we lose our place there. Sure. Arethusa's got lots of warthogs all of a sudden, and nice and relaxed as well. Haven't run away at all. Hair's just catching the light perfectly. Alright, sorry warthog. We have to go, or we won't see the lions. One thing about being on the western edge of Arathusa is that we generally can't hear your questions. So I'm going to make sure that we don't spend too much time around here. I'm going to look. There's a hyena. Oh, there is a hyena. Wow, well spotted, Brian. Hey, cool. A very full-looking hyena. I'm going to duck here. I'd like to get a nice shot of it before it disappears into the. It's going to go across our western boundary very, very soon, but really well done. Awesome. What a nice surprise. Looks like it spent its entire day in mud. It's a very full, very dirty hyena. Well spotted, Brian. That's really nice. I haven't often seen hyena on Arathusa, though of course they must be here. Very, very round belly. That's an absolutely enormous hyena. Definitely not a young individual. It's going to duck across. I'm going to try and stay with her just as she goes across the boundary before looping back to the adults, to the lions. But she was quite a seriously sized hyena. Very impressive. Huge belly. I think it disappeared already. This is right on our boundary and into the drainage line. She's vanished somewhere there. There you go, straight into the setting sun, and somewhere disappeared off. Okay, well that was epic. A nice surprise there from Brian. Completely unexpected. It's one of the first hyenas I've seen in Arathusa. I think that's just because we have spent so much time acquainting ourselves with the ones of Djuma. We haven't spent all that much time getting to know the ones of Arathusa. They must be around. I don't know of any active den sites, but I'm sure there are some somewhere here. Or maybe just across in Elephant Plains. In terms of our clan and territory sizes, most likely this is a different clan that we're seeing, a hyena from a different clan. We're about, I'd say about 10 kilometers away. No, that's maybe an exaggeration. 7 kilometers away from the current active hyena den. It's in the northwestern corner of Djuma. We're in the southwestern corner of Arathusa. So most likely a separate part. So the lioness presumably is hiding out somewhere in this drainage line. I'm not going to walk to go and see her, obviously, because we're going to loop around and see the lioness and the lions if we do know where they are. I could be scouring the drainage line for days. But I'm sure she's going to come out soon and rejoin the rest of the pride, or they're going to head down to her. Once we're back towards the lines, then our comms will be a little bit clearer as well. And I'll be able to follow through with more of your questions. There we go. Let's loop around and see what they've been up to since we left them. In our absence, there's 2 vehicles. At least they can help us keep an eye on things. Stations with those umbrellas in our approach. So we're back on the other side now that we've done the full loop around the females sleeping on the dam wall. And we're once again with these young males. The one with the injury is the one facing us. So we can't get a good view of it just yet, although we will be able to a little bit later. As I said, they are looking a little bit thin, but will hopefully be up and about. Right, so a bit of a recap for viewers who might have missed it, or new viewers, as to what's happening here. These are the members of the Tsalala Breakaway Pride. Now, over the last few weeks, we've had some serious disruption in the lion dynamics around this area. So the 2 dominant males, the Matimba males, that used to hang around Arethusa and Djuma, as well as Buffelshoek, they were usurped and pushed out by 5 young males who came through. And in response, the Matimba males, quite actually contrary to my expectation at least, they rushed south into Londolozi. And really, really interesting is the fact that in a complete turn of affairs, whilst the Birmingham boys stayed and terrorized the Nkuhuma and the Styx prides, the Matimba males have actually been somewhat terrorizing the Tsalala Pride in Londolozi. They chased them off a hippo kill a couple of weeks ago. They've now settled with 2 of the other females, but I think quite possibly due to the fact that there are these 3 young boys, there's been a lot of conflict with them. One of these boys has been caught in the crossfire. He's got a big hole in his back left hip, an injury that looks fairly painful, but definitely will heal up quite well.
There's a lioness with no tail, which is the first time I've ever seen her. That's the lioness I was talking about. But she's ducked away somewhere into the drainage line when she was chasing the warthogs. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see how this situation plays out. Now, last time we spoke, or this morning when we spoke about the history of these animals, and I have been given quite a lot of information about it, which I haven't had a chance to go through fully yet today. But apparently this pride was controlled by the Mapochos. And Diane, you were suggesting that you think that these 3 young males could well be the offspring of the Mapochos. And it's very interesting to see the way that this pride has been upset over the last few weeks. You see, as far as I knew, well, since the death of the Mapochos anyway, this pride was under the control of the Majingalani males. That's to the best of my knowledge and from the information I've had from other guides. The Mapochos were killed. When was the last Mapocho killed? It was about... was it 4 years ago, or was it not quite as long ago as that? Either way, I think that these 3 are at only 2 years old, probably the sons of the Majingalanis, but I could be wrong. Sorry, Diane, if I am. I'm still getting a bit of a handle as to the way that this all works.
Like I said, it does not look good for these 4 young lions. Extremely thin. I've never seen them this thin.
It'll be interesting to see what they do over the next few hours. They're definitely going to need to hunt. They're very, very hungry. Sorry to drag you away from the lions, but I just want to see if the hippos continue doing what they're doing. They had a little bit of a scuffle in front of us. And there's a little bit of friction here. They both opened their jaws wide. It was so brief. It was just for the briefest of moments. They both opened their jaws and thrashed their heads around for the moment. And just like that, it seems to be over. I'm not sure if it was a conflict between 2 males that got into each other's space, or a male or a female. It didn't look too serious. But as I've said before, it's going to become more and more common to see these sorts of clashes between 2 hippos, especially as the dam starts to shrink. If we don't get some more rain soon, then the dam starts to shrink, their area gets smaller and smaller, and tempers start to get a little bit frayed. I was hoping they'd do it again, but they've stopped now.
Really hope these guys actually get something these days. I really hope so.
Okay, well, it seems there was a big yawn there, but it seems as though the fighting part of that is all over. There's also a really cute little baby at the back. I don't know if we're going to be able to get a good view of it. I hope it pops out. Mom is currently wearing a blanket of water weeds at the back there, at the back and the left of your screen. She's going to duck off again. There is a tiny calf. I'm sure regular viewers of the Arethusa Dam camera must have seen that calf coming and going. Oh, and there's that tail motion we spoke about this morning. The scattering of the dung. And as I said, the males, the dominant bulls, will do it outside of the water, but the females will also do it. Oh, another big yawn.
Look at those teeth.
Oh,
Oh my god.
big yawn.
Yeah, it's huge, eh? Yeah, it's massive.
And this is almost...
That definitely is the big bull in this area.
Oh, he's showing off. Whatever their fight was about, it's still not quite over. He's definitely the dominant bull within this dam, and he's letting everybody know. And he's chasing off his rival, whoever that may have been. They put on a serious show there. He still is. That's part of his way of displaying and letting everybody know how incredibly strong he is.
Yeah, it's very shallow, yeah. It's probably lying down or...
And just like that, done with the display.
He won't be lying down.
The other hippo that he was in conflict with has completely moved off already.
Can I open his mouth?
Oh, there he goes.
Quickly, folks.
Another big yawn. And that's not actually... Oh, is he going to roll? Yes, there's the foot. Just like what we saw Bob doing the other day.
Oh, what'd he do?
My word.
Big rolling over onto his back. That is terribly intimidating, hippo. It's exactly what we saw Bob doing before. The yawning and then the rolling. He's letting everybody know how big and scary he is. Here he goes. Up out of the water. And I don't know if he's going to follow behind that other hippo or if he's going to give us another big yawn. And as I mentioned with Bob, it's what's known as displacement behavior. Although that's generally more when it's aimed at an animal that's discomforted with other presence. Sorry, it's not displacement behavior. In this particular case, he is being just purely threatening to whatever rival that happened to be.
Alright, folks, we just want to give some of the other guys also a chance to come and see this magnificent sighting. Absolutely.
Another big yawn. Complete with a cover of water weeds. I don't know what happened with that other male, but he's quite clearly not happy about the way that it went. Of course, worth remembering that although he's threatening another male now, and we can have a good chuckle at him yawning and displaying, it's worth remembering that that's no idle threat. And if he really wanted to, he could do some serious damage with those tusks. You saw how incredibly powerful they looked. Really nice and long. Oh, I'm going to drink. I'm in the way. It's the lion with the wounded back leg. He's trying to find a nice position to drink from. Now, there's a lot of debate about the background to this particular pride. So Vicky, Diane and Chris, you're saying this is not the Tsalala breakaways because they have cubs. You're saying this is the actual Tsalala Pride. I'm going with where I came out with breakaways was from messages that went through from the other guides, but they were still trying to work out if that was the case or not. So it's useful to have that kind of information. And he's having a big drink. That wound on his hip is fairly serious, but it will heal. But it is obviously causing him a fair bit of pain. And that was almost certainly caused by conflict with the Matimba males. So for all of you who were discussing who they might be, I thank you for your thoughts and your knowledge. Obviously I'm not fully up to date with the various lions that are around here. Apparently you've got a dual view here with our view of the lion drinking and then the Arathusa Dam camera giving you a lovely front on angle. And just while we are discussing a little bit of the history of this pride, apparently Diane and Football all confirmed that it was these cubs were not, or these young males were not sired by the Mapojos. The Mapojos apparently only sired females from the Tsalalas. Now I know that the lioness without the tail that we've seen apparently did have cubs with the Mapojos. As to where they are now, they'd probably be a bit more grown up than these young males. And whether or not they're the two females that are currently with the Matimba males as we speak on Londolozi is a matter that's up for debate. Could well be likely. Oh, he is so thirsty. That was a very long drinking patch. I'm not driving all the way down to the dam to get us a shot, just because we are right in front of the lodge and it is going to not help them out in terms of erosion along their view of the dam, so I'm not going to in any way do that. We've still got this wonderful view of him. Shifted his back end up and you can see that wound quite clearly. It looks very, very uncomfortable. Hello. Still drinking. And look, it has been a very, very hot day, and he is injured and he is stressed, so it could be that that's also increased his desire for water, but he's been drinking for a very, very long time. I really hope that these lions manage to kill tonight and eat tonight. It's fascinating how it's all come full circle back onto Arathusa and into our area. How incredible is that? The story started with us, with the Birmingham boys, and that very first day when they rushed up and started, our female's going to go and join him. This is the young lioness. She might be the daughter of the other lioness without the tail that isn't quite here at the moment. And I'm wondering if they're not going to very soon get up and start moving towards wherever she is. Big yawn. And I think once they've had a drink, they're going to move off and start looking for her. And even then, quite possibly start looking for opportunities to hunt. She's trying to find a nice position to get into the water. You must have a wonderful view from the Djuma Dam, from the Arathusa Dam camera as well. That's beautiful. They're clearly feeling very safe and secure now. They definitely look a lot less skittish than they did earlier. They've settled down quite well. And here he goes back up. He's not limping terribly, but it is painful. He is not putting weight on that leg for too long. And there's a slight drag to the paw when he moves it. You probably see that in his track as well. Just an ever slight scrape in the toe of the back foot. And a chin covered in mud. You're going to see a head rub. Nope. Almost. And we spoke quite a lot this morning about the fact that these boys, when they do go off on their own, will form, at least they have the three of them together. And I know that the comparisons with Junior came through. So Junior being that young sub-adult from the Nkuhuma Pride that has since gone off and seems to be moving about on his own. And at least, although the three of them are younger than Junior, at least there are three of them, which greatly increases their chances. And these three are going to stay tightly bonded for the rest of their life. And this might be the first conflict in their lives that they've had to weather, their first experience with strange males causing trouble. But it's a beautiful evening, and they've got the knowledge that they're going to be secure in each other's company for the future. Ines is still also busy having a very, very big drink. Well, I suppose with it being 35 degrees earlier, it's not surprising. Just looking off intently, off to the left. The lines are still resting, and it has got a little bit cooler. It's dropped down from 35 to about 27 degrees, so it still feels warm, but I think these lines are still going to be reluctant to move. And on this really beautiful summer evening, I believe that the drone is up and about and having a look at the sunset, as well as a herd of elephants. And since I couldn't get that herd of elephants nice and clearly for you earlier, let's head across and see what the drone is doing, and I'll catch up with you a little bit later. And we're back once again. Now apparently you only saw one elephant, not a whole herd, but how amazing was that view? It must be absolutely incredible to see what, from our perspective, is a beautiful evening, but to see it out and about in the sky, and to think that as far as you were looking with that drone, these lions have come even further than that. They've come from far down in the south. And you can only imagine the level of disruption that led to them moving up as fast and as far as they did. And we noticed earlier that they were very unsettled. They're much more relaxed now, and they've actually come to a perfect place. As far as I know, the Birmingham boys are further across in Hoffman's. There's no other lions on Arethusa. But they had better hope that they stay beneath the Birmingham boys' radar, because the last thing that they need is an attack from the Birmingham boys as well as the Matimbas, or to be under pressure from both of those coalitions. And they're right smack bang in the middle at the moment. They've found a place of temporary sanctuary and tranquility, but it does put them between two coalitions rather than with just the one, with just the Matimbas. And the reason I think they left, as I mentioned before, is I think these females moved these young males out of reach of the Matimbas. I think the Matimbas, these males are just at the right age. They're not cubs to be ignored or to be killed, and they're not females that the Matimbas could potentially mate with very soon. They're young males that are only going to be competition, and what's worse, that works to their disadvantage. They're young males who are not the Matimbas. They were not sired by the Matimbas. So at this point, they're a source of competition that the Matimbas simply don't want. And I think that is why the two lionesses have stayed with the Matimba males, but the other two have brought this group back up into Arethusa. I must say, they do look rather contented, quite happy and flat. It'd be so interesting to see if they are still here tomorrow. The one thing we did notice about this particular pride is, in particular, I think that the females are very, very good looking. This one is quite young. She's also got her back to us, which doesn't really help. But the female without the tail is one of the most stunning looking lionesses. They've both got really bright orange eyes and perfectly symmetrical features. The teenage boys, on the other hand, I don't know that I'd call them gorgeous. They're a bit scruffy looking. We've spent a lot of time looking at this guy because he's been facing us, but just have a look at the scraggly manes, particularly right now when they are a bit thin. They've got huge feet, scraggly manes. They look like they've been caught, which is exactly what's happened, right in the middle of a growth spurt. Something got their attention.
Where now?
And Trisha, just while we're looking at him and his scraggly blonde mane, or them and their scraggly blonde manes, you were wondering why some lions have more black in their manes than others, since these lions look a bit blonde. There's a level of genetics to it. There's, sweet head rub there. I think that they're going to go find this other female now. Let's just see what this female does. No. Settle down again. So I can finish up answering Trisha's question. I still think they might move. Lions quite often do this. They get up and move a little bit, lie down, get up, move a bit more before they finally get themselves up. Well, Trisha, the blonde manes, there's partly a genetic factor to it. In this particular case, most lions of this age have blonde manes. They just haven't had a chance to go dark yet, and they can often darken with age. But that being said, the stronger factor is actually genetics. So lions quite often with a Kalahari bloodline and also very high levels of testosterone tend to have darker manes than those of East Africa, or the lions, some of the lions of East Africa. That's a general rule. It's not set in stone, but they have seemed to show. What have you seen, boy? What are you looking at? You can see by the way he's standing, that flap of skin around the back of his stomach is a very clear indication of a hungry lion. Whatever it was that attracted his attention is not that interesting anymore. I've mentioned that he's looking very, very thin, and Dr. Debbie, you were wondering, based on their condition, when last they had a good meal. And I would say it was probably about 6 days ago or so, maybe even 7. I know that they were chased off that hippo carcass a week or 2 ago, so it was before then. I'm not sure how much they managed to eat before they were chased away. But it's definitely getting to the point where they are going to need to get some food in them. Now these lions could still survive for quite a lot longer. They've got another few days at the best, or at the worst, and probably up to another week or more before they start to get to the point where they're too weak. I also think that their condition at the moment comes from the fact that, well, we're just going to have a quick windscreen wipe. Is it a bug, Brian? Every now and again in summer you meet a bug, or a bug meets your windscreen. What's it called? Help me. The screen of the camera.
The lens.
The lens, thank you. I had a moment. Every now and again a bug gets onto your lens. I also think that their condition at the moment, because they are looking so thin, is not just caused by the fact that they haven't had a lack of a meal. I also think that they are incredibly stressed out. And we saw that female without the tail earlier. These guys do have very clear, defined black eyeliner, so to speak. They've got very clear dark lines around their eyes, but if you look closely, it's not so clear on the males, but it was very, very clear on the female. Looking a bit closer, there's actually lots of ticks around her eyes, and that's also a clear indication of an animal that is stressed. They often carry ticks, but she's got quite a lot of them around her eyes. Well, our lions aren't going to be up to too much. I'm going to try and stick with them for the next half an hour of drive, but I might try and loop around and see if I can find out where that female without the tail has gone. She's somewhere over there in that wall. But I don't think that these lions are going to be moving very far. For now, I know that Brent is with some zebras, and he's like to say hello to you for the first time on the sunset safari, and we'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Good evening and welcome to the Sunset Safari from us. I know you guys have been with Jamie for a really long time. Jeandre and I have still been up to super secret bushwalk stuff. And so secret we can't tell you about it yet. But we have found some zebras here on Cheetah Cutline and in the twilight. And obviously it's getting to that stage of the evening where it's getting a little bit risky to walk. So we're back on the vehicle and we are slowly making our way home, and I thought you guys might like these zebras in this beautiful late afternoon light. We're just going to move a little bit closer to them now. But we'll just say that the super secret stuff is really fascinating, really interesting, and hopefully we'll be able to tell you about it quite soon. Magnificent zebra stallion here on the left, prime condition. He's also quite a nice and dark zebra. There he is. So a little bit darker than the others, and that's just a same thing as that some people's skin is slightly darker. When you see how thick his neck is, and he's munching away quite happily on a lot of this nice fresh grass. And zebras are bulk grazers, so they're not as fussy as a lot of the other grazing animals, and they pretty much munch everything that comes into them. And they've got that hindgut fermenting stomach, so they don't process as much as a wildebeest, for example, who's a ruminant. That lovely almost pink tinge from the sun that's already set. And these zebras are looking very happy and healthy. So zebras always look quite fat due to the fact of that hindgut fermentation system that they have in their gut. But the one way to really tell if a zebra is losing condition is to look at their mane. Their mane starts to fold and flop down in certain areas, and that's a true sign that a zebra is in losing condition. And you can see these zebras' manes are perfect. I think a lot of fans of the 70s punk rock movement would have been really jealous of that zebra's mohawk. So we're just going to get behind them again. You can see there's probably about 20 spread out along here and enjoying the nice grass. I think they are. It was an absolutely magical time of the day. Temperatures just dropped and it has been suitably steamy while we've been marching around on foot today. Jeandre and I are getting a real good bout of exercise. And it looks like they're heading off to the east out of our property. There is a waterhole not too far there, so maybe they're off to have an evening drink. Good night, zebra. We're going to continue on, and hopefully while we're on our way home we'll break that leopard duck, or at least we broke the lion duck. Jamie's been with those wonderful Tsalala animals, and we all went out during the day to have a look at them as well, and I haven't seen that pride since 2008, can you believe it? The original Tsalala Pride was a pride I used to see a lot of when I worked at Londolozi. and they used to spend a lot of time around the lodge. And when I first started at Londo's, they'd took quite a beating from the then Mapocho males, and there was one tailless lioness. I think the guys up north used to call her BB, but we used to refer to her as the, oh, there's another zebra crossing. We used to refer to her as the tailless lioness, because we used to find her on Taylor's River Road very frequently. So TTL, if we want to abbreviate. And I've actually got some spectacular photographs of her, but it always looks quite funny. And, I mean, I've got a photo of her in the dry riverbed of the Sand River, and it's very strange seeing a lion without a tail. Also, I've actually seen the Tsalala Pride fight with crocodiles over a giraffe carcass. The giraffe had died in the river, and the lions and crocodiles had quite a battle over the remains of that. So, thanks for joining us, even though it was for a tiny little bit. We're going to cross quickly across to Jamie. That Tsalala Pride we're just chatting about is on the move, and hopefully they give you a spectacular rest of your evening drive.
Welcome back, guys. And I hope that you enjoyed a little brief moment with Brent and his fun times with the zebra. I've just been double checking what's happening with some of our comms issues, and also to try and take that opportunity very quickly to use the Game Drive channel without cutting our feed. Now, unfortunately, guys, there are other people waiting to come into the sighting, and we are going to have to leave at some point in the next few minutes. I've asked that we just be given the last 5 minutes just to spend a little bit more time with them, and then it will be time to head out once again. Oh, it looks as though they're going to stick around, but they should be on their way soon, so keep watching the Arathusa Dam camera, and if I do find out that there's any possibility of coming back to them, then I absolutely will, I promise. But at least we have got to spend some of the afternoon with them. And they make quite the trio, these three. All roughly the same age, and then led by that female in front. And I still don't know what became of the female without a tail, but she's here somewhere. And I'm sure they will be reunited for the nightly activities. Could well be a while before they head off and go hunting. Now, we spoke a little bit earlier about Junior and how similar these young males are to Junior. And they're in the same position that he's been in. Now, Cameron, who is 5 years old from Ohio, you were saying surely these three could be friends with Junior, and maybe even Junior could protect them from the Matimba males, since he is the son of the Matimba boys. Now, for those of you who don't know, Junior is a sub-adult male from the Nkuhuma Pride, who's right on the cusp of adulthood, and I think he has dispersed off. But Cameron, I have really good news to tell you. We don't know for sure, but if these three did meet up with Junior, then there's a good chance that they would stay with him and form a coalition with him and be his buddies for the rest of his life, because it doesn't matter that he's not their brother or anything like that. Lions don't work that way.
So the males, if they did meet up with Junior, they could stick together. And maybe Junior wouldn't save them from the Matimbas, but at least they'd be 4 of them nice and strong together and moving through the area with support. So Junior wouldn't be on his own, and these 3 would have an older, almost like an older brother, to guide them and to counsel them. It'd be absolutely amazing. So we hope, and I definitely hope, Cameron, that they meet up with Junior. I think that that would be the best outcome possible in this story. Alrighty, well, let's have our last few moments with them before we leave. Now, it's a difficult situation for them to be in. As I said, at the moment, they're currently between the Matimbas and the Birmingham boys. And Sandy, you were wondering if there's a place where they could go where they'd be safe from all of them, or at least both the Birminghams and the Matimbas. And honestly, Sandy, it's a little bit difficult. I don't really think so. In terms of, there's other males out there, so even if they move away from the Birminghams or the Matimbas, it's going to put them in the territory of some other male coalition. At least they know with the Matimbas, some of their Pride members have started mating with them, so there's a chance that they could go back to that area. And also, with Lion Prides, they try and stay in one area as much as possible. It is their part of their home range and their territory as well. So I think that they'd avoid that if they can. And there's nowhere really for them to go at this point without pushing them into an area where there are other males. It's in their best interests to, at the moment, stay mobile, I would say, and stay nomadic. And then maybe to start heading back to the Matimbas when things have calmed down and there's less testosterone floating about. And when the females are ready to mate with them. But that could be in the next year or so only that it's safe for them to go back, once the 3 young males have disappeared off. But those are predictions, and they're not necessarily supported completely by what the animals are going to do. It's impossible to really fully predict how it's all going to work. We could be talking to you in 2 weeks' time and saying that the Tsalalas were seen back with the Matimbas, all feeding at one carcass with the young males as well. We can try to predict in terms of genetics, but it's never going to give us a definite answer. Alrighty, well, it's time for us to head off. So we'll say goodbye to the lions and we'll start on our way. Let's make space for some of the other guides to come and have a look at them. Cheers, lions. It's been an interesting day with you. Go and find some other things to finish off our last few moments of the sunset safari. Stations, I'm leaving Shlambi Ngala. As we draw to a close of another wonderful, beautiful summer evening, we're heading off into the sunset, and I believe that there's a beautiful last view from the drone. So let's head up there now, and I'll be back with you very, very soon. Was that view from the air. It is such a stunning evening. It really, really is. And it's indescribable. I've mentioned this before. It's indescribable, the feeling of a summer evening out in the bush. Just disentangling myself from the cable of multiple radios and then one spotlight. We're
out and about. And for our last few moments, I'm going to once again double check the drainage line to see if there is any sign of shadow hanging around out and about there. Dropped down to 25 degrees, but still really, really warm. And the remnants of it still feels fairly baking. I think it's just because the sun has spent all day beating down on the earth, and it still seems to be radiating up from the base. I'm not driving with any shoes on, and I can definitely feel the warmth, although admittedly a lot of that I think comes from Wendy. But I could feel it even when we were sitting at that lion sighting by the dam. You just know that there's so much heating going on at the moment. The sun was incredibly strong when we were out earlier, when we came back to the lions. Coming through. As we draw to the end of the sunset safari, if you missed my update earlier, clearly we're not going to be doing a fireside chat this evening, and that's because Brent's been busy doing all kinds of equipment tests with a new secret piece of mystery technology. And at this point I'm starting to feel very much like I've fallen behind the times of technological development. I can only watch in admiration as the people around me know what's going on out there in the technological world. And we've also been doing a lot of tests with the drone as well, all in preparation for bringing you the best possible live safaris that we can. For that reason, we just thought we'd give the fireside chat a miss tonight. We will be, never fear, we will still be continuing, and I know that James Henry will be back very, very soon, in the next few days or so. I hear rumors that he might be driving on Thursday, but those could be rumors. We'll have to wait and see. And I'm sure that he's keen to be out in a fireside chat and playing a guitar for you. Even, maybe, possibly without tying myself down to anything definite, give James and myself a chance to also practice together as well. Perhaps we could bring you a little bit of a duet. And I believe I was committed weeks ago to the cause when James decided that that was what was going to happen. I do have my flute with me this time around, so it will have to make an appearance at some point on Fireside Chat. like I've scanned this drainage line over the last 2 days. I must have been through it and past it and looked at it about 10 times. And I know that Shadow is hiding here somewhere. She's somewhere around here. It's just a matter of figuring out exactly where she is. But we'll find her. Don't worry, we will find her. I'm sure you're all keen. But so amazing to have a chance to spend some time with a lion pride that I certainly have never seen before, and I'm sure a lot of viewers have never seen before. I'm very, very keen to find Shadow, and I know that's partly because so many of you will be keen to see her. It will be the first time we've seen her since her separation from Shadow. And Dr. Debbie, you were wondering if I have any updates as to how she's handling the separation, and apparently she's been absolutely fine according to the Arethusa guides. So they've seen her a couple of times. She hasn't been frantically calling or anything like that. She's just been going about her daily, day-to-day business. She is naturally going to have looked for him once he had been taken away. She probably was incredibly confused, and as I've said a few times, I really, really wish we could have explained the situation to her. But as it is, as sad as it is, it's still the best outcome that could possibly have happened in a rather bad situation, or very, very unfortunate situation. And we're going to work together, or at least everybody has worked together to keep Shadow's first offspring that she's managed to raise alive. It is actually a wonderful thing. No updates apart from the fact that she seems to be absolutely fine. We've mentioned our musical plans for the next fireside chat, and Thada, you were saying soon we're going to have a whole band put together. Me on the flute and James Henry on guitar, Scott playing some kind of drum-like instrument, and then an instrument for Brent. Well, I've heard talks of shakers having been involved in the past. A story that I was told just before I started working here. I believe that the Shakers came out. So you never know, we might indeed have a band. The WildEarth Fireside Chat Band. Okay, that's not a very catchy name. We need something better than that. We definitely need something better than that. I'll leave it up to you guys. I'm sure far more imaginative in terms of picking out our band name, though it will of course have to be run by James Henry first before officially being adopted. Absolutely stunning. I'm going going to try get us to a nice open area before the end of the sunset safari so that we can stop and have a look at it. There's some incredible colors coming through. And hard to believe that a couple of months ago we would have been completely in the dark by now and absolutely freezing. Look how beautiful those clouds are. It's incredible to see those really stunning colors. And all I'm hoping for now, the only thing that could make these summer evenings better is if it does start to rain and we get a couple of big storms to fill up the dams. Arathusa big bolsters, big speed bumps that they've got here. They're very, very sharp. Oh, there's a bush baby, but that's going to be almost impossible to get. Can you see it from where you are, Brian? It's on the trunk at the back.
Right there.
There you go. I think he just jumped.
No, he's still there, I think.
Is he still there?
I don't know. That's what.
Oh, brilliant. Here you go. Oh, I don't know where he's disappeared off to. Oh well, we gave it a good try. I'm gonna make my way towards the clearing ahead of us. Let me see if I can catch that bush baby for the last few moments. But I think he's ducked off nesting hole, the dead marula tree on Buffelston Cutline. That was the exception rather than the rule. They don't really stick around all that much to be filmed. They get shy and they bounce. It has been a truly incredible day. I don't think that I'm going to get to the open clearing before we reach the end of the sunset safari, but take my word for it that it's the most incredible evening out here. It's still lovely and warm. The smells of the wildflowers are starting to come through, and there's just this beautiful atmosphere. It's relaxed, but with that sense of expectation that comes with every African evening, as you wonder what the night is going to bring. And I really hope that for the Tsalala Pride, tonight brings them luck and success in their hunting endeavors. They're going to need some food fairly soon, and I hope they get it tonight. Oh, it doesn't look as though we're going to make it. I love it. Wingnut's idea for the band name, Karula Cruders. Very, very entertaining. Very witty. Anyway, thank you for a wonderful afternoon of lions and that wonderful Tsalala Pride that we've seen for the, or at least my very first time of seeing them. It's been great to spend it with you and to hear all of your questions and your comments. And a big thank you to Brian for all of his hard camera work, as well as Tara and Kirst in FC, and Alex for all of his technical genius. Well guys, we will catch you tomorrow for the sunrise safari. Have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and we'll see you tomorrow.